Welcome. This tutorial is to help you to make the jacket displayed or presented for McCall's 6172. I'm Angela and I'll be directing you. Thank you. The jacket we're making is View A, and if you note, the guide sheet will show you the first page as posted here will show you the pieces that you need, and followed by the layout for jacket A, which will include the jacket, the interfacing, and the lining. Thank you.
Once you decided which design that you want to make, you want to separate the pieces and be careful about the size that you're going to use. If you're going to need multi-sizes, you need to adjust the pattern accordingly. And depending on which length you want for this jacket, you want to cut away that length, or you can fold it under so you can save it, the tissue, for later. Just a little tip that might interest you. When you're cutting your pattern pieces and you have different lengths, such as this particular pattern, there are 3 lengths. If you're going to cut away one of the lengths, you might want to number it with the matching number as the piece itself, so that in the future, if you want to rejoin them, you will not have so much trouble trying to figure out which piece goes to which piece. So if you see, I put a number 1 at the bottom, which is the length that I'm going to cut away. And when I decide that I'm going to add it back, I'll add it back to this piece number 1. So here you have the 2 pieces, and when you decide to connect them again, you can join it together. Okay, when you're working with your pattern pieces, make sure that you read the notations on the piece itself. It will tell you how many pieces to cut of the fabric. It'll tell you what piece that you're working with. And if there's a lining or interfacing required, it's also going to tell you. For instance, here it's telling you lining cut 2, okay, and interfacing cut 1. Excuse me, interfacing cut 2. Okay, hopefully that's a clear picture. If not, you can refer to the piece itself from your pattern. Okay. Now, with the exception of the different variations on the views, most of these pieces are all going to be used for either of the views, with the exception of the pockets. So here are the pattern pieces for the pocket with the welt. This is the piece for the pocket. That's just the patch pocket. And then you have the little welt itself. Okay, so all of those are going to come together nicely, and we'll look at that further on in this video. So now, if you've done your fitting and everything already with the tissue or with a muslin fit, you're ready to proceed to cutting it out. A few things when cutting: you want to make sure that you're cutting your patterns with precision. Okay, and let's look at that in just a moment. Don't forget, as you're laying out your pattern pieces, to measure the grain line from the grain line to the edge of the fabric, whether it be on the fold or to the selvage. And remember that it needs to be equal from both ends of the grain line. So from here to here, it needs to be the same distance. From here to here, it needs to be the same distance. Okay, this is what your pattern should look like if you are working on jacket number A. Okay, this is what your layout should look like. Because I want to use this pattern again, maybe for a different size, I'm going to trace the size that I need to, or transfer the size that I need to the fabric. So I insert the tracing paper just under the pattern tissue. In this case, I'm only going to trace the cutting line on the fabric, on the top of the fabric, not underneath the fabric. Okay? So, and I will trace the desired size on each pattern piece wherever is necessary. This particular piece does not have extra sizes, so I'll just be tracing the welt here, transferring this marking to the fabric. Here you'll see pattern piece number 5, which is the under collar. Okay, this tissue is placed face side down, and it's also on the bias. So you're not going to lay it straight up, place the tissue straight up and down. You're going to follow the grain line when placing it. So this grain line goes straight up and down here, so you wouldn't place it straight up and down with the piece turned the other way, if you follow what I'm saying. This particular piece is placed on the fold, and you want to place it exactly on the fold. So this line should be exactly on the fold. Okay. Piece number 8, on the layout it looks like that piece is on the fold, but it's not on the fold. It's actually to be cut. Off of the fold line. So you're going to cut 2 pieces of number 8, and then that's for the fabric. And then you're going to cut 2 pieces of interfacing, and you'll see that noted on the notations under the number 8 on the pattern piece. Here, as I indicated before, I will trace the desired size. I will trace this line with the tracing paper, and this will be my cutting line. When you're tracing, you want to make sure that you're tracing precisely. Precision means everything when you're sewing, so that your pieces will come together properly. Okay, so when you're cutting, you want to make sure that you are cutting with precision. You're cutting with scissors. Just place your hand close to the cutting line. Hold your fabric steady or in place, and just take small strokes with your scissors right along the cutting line. If you're using a rotary cutter, make sure that your blade is sharp. Okay, and make sure that you don't cut over any pins. Okay, the rotary cutters are very nice to have. And of course, if you want to use your pinking shears, you want to get a nice sharp pair of pinking shears. Pardon me while I get those shears. Okay. Make sure that your shears, pinking shears, are sharp, and what they will actually do is give you a zigzag edge as you cut, but you also want to cut right along your cutting line with your pinking shears. Hopefully you can see that pretty good. Okay, so that will give you a pinked edge as you cut. With this jacket, you don't necessarily have to cut with any pinking shears. You don't have to necessarily finish the edges because it's going to be lined, and the lining will conceal all of the seams on the inside of the jacket. But make sure that you're cutting precisely or cutting with precision when you do cut. If you traced your line to cut, you also want to make sure that you're cutting those lines that you trace with precision. I traced this line, which is a size 18, so I'm going to cut that line where I traced it. Okay, just pushing the pattern piece back. Okay, notice how straight that line is. You want to practice cutting a nice straight line. Here again, you just lift back the pattern piece. Lift back the pattern piece there and begin to cut where you traced or transferred your cutting line. Just in case you missed that, just go right there again. You're going to trace a cut along the line that you traced out, that you transferred. Remember, when you're tracing your, transferring your markings, or you're tracing your cutting lines, make sure you stay on the right line. A lot of times people tend to start tracing one cutting line and skip over to another one, but you want to make sure that you stay on the tracing line for the size, or the cutting line for the size that you're going to be using. Okay, and transfer the notches again. I just want to reiterate that. Can't stress that enough. Okay, make sure that when you trace, you're tracing right on the line also. Okay, kind of missed that a little bit, but you get the general idea. Well, where am I? Here. Over here. Okay. This is your tracing line here. At least it's my tracing line for the size that I'm going to be making. Okay. So then I can kind of pull it back. That's why you don't want to put your pins too close to the edges, because you want to be able to slide your tracing paper underneath there easily and then move it out easily. So now you can pull it back, and then you can begin the cutting process.